The way I think of hope is as active, not passive, not waiting, but doing, as something that's objective and subjective. Objective in that it's trying to make something happen in the real world, and subjective that it's an accompanying feeling and attitude and disposition. And secondly, I see hope as collective, not individual. So that I'm thinking in terms of social hope, and social hope as having projects for transforming the world, making the world better. And that's my particular way of saying this is what hope is. If hope is social, and if it's active, what happens in the contemporary world? And what happens in the contemporary world is that people experience themselves increasingly not as part of any collectivity, and not as part of creating hope actively, but as sort of passively waiting and as individuals. The privatization of hope is what happens when a social project and a social disposition becomes translated into an individual one. One example in my book is what happens in the United States when parents send their children to charter schools rather than public schools, and they're sending their children to schools that are funded publicly but are essentially private schools, and they're pulling themselves out of the public school system in order to get the best deal for their children. SARTRE'S relevance for today is on many themes and many topics, the first one of which is what I describe as his existential Marxism, as an effort to understand how individuals interiorize the society and re-exteriorize it as their individual project. In other words, how the society and the individual come together in individual experience and action. That's one crucial relevance of Sartre. A second crucial relevance, besides the existential Marxism, is Sartre's effort to understand how groups function from developing from serial separate individuals into collectivities, and how those collectivities make significant social change, and then later, after achieving something significant, how those collectivities become rigid and stultified and begin operating against the individuals. That's a second important learning from Sartre. A third one is his amazing effort to disentangle and understand what locked up in Marxism and communism. His effort to see the inner logic of it. He's brilliant at trying to grasp the inner logic of negative phenomena. He does it with Stalin in particular. And he's trying to show how the process of a revolution dedicated to liberating humanity becomes a kind of prison house for humanity without ever losing its claim to be liberating. And he's trying to do that not academically and not simply to understand, but also to understand in order to free up the clogged theoretical and social process under Stalin.